Howdy ESSM 406. In our last lecture, we talked about using an economic model as justification for why we create public policy to address imperfections in the market. Well, you may be asking, what is a market? So let's discuss that really quickly before we move on. We're so used to markets that we actually forget how they were developed. We think of them as being independent of government. But it's actually a form of collective decision making, which is what public policy is and what government is. So markets don't come about naturally. You can't go into the forest and buy a phone. You have to have a place to go buy the phone. And the person that is selling the phone has to have a place to sell that phone. They have to have a store. They have to have property rights. They have to be following laws and regulations. So all of that is a result of government and a society. So markets are actually embedded into government and society. We often, in the US, allocate property rights to goods. And what do I mean by property rights? We think of that as being natural. Well, this is my phone. This is my notebook. This is my computer. There are many other cultures and societies where ownership has a completely different tactic. Maybe something is all communal. No one owns the one thing. So when we think of markets, we have to recognize that they are developed by our society. So let's think of another example here in Texas. One of the things that Texas is very well known for is its property rights. Very strong property rights and land ownership model here in Texas. So for instance, if you own a house, you have a title. You have a title that you can take to the courts to prove to your neighbors these are the boundary lines. And there's a system in place for arbitrating that process. But where did you get that house from? Did you make it? Or sorry, the land, did you make the land? Of course you didn't make the land. You might have made the house, but the land that you're on, you're owning. And you bought that land from someone else. Now, who did that person get the land from? That person might have bought the land several generations ago from a Spanish person, from a Mexican person. And before that, how were things managed? Before that, we had the Comanches, we had the Apaches. There was a different type of land ownership for all these different groups of people that were living in this area of Texas. It hasn't been until very recently that we have the system of land ownership and property rights that we have today. So how are markets created? They're created because you have government, society coming in and coming together on rules and regulations and policies on how they want to spread the wealth. So our next lecture, we're actually going to talk about the limitations to policy, what we talked about before with the externalities, the common pool resources, and social justice and environmental justice. But I hope you feel a little bit more strongly on understanding what a market is.